just...
Welcome. To your awakening, please take pause. Your reality is adjusted.
That seemed to fit quite well, that it lagged while I put in the little audio bit to make it sound like it was lagging. Yeah, how synchronistic. Good evening, folks. Evening, greetings, well met, salutations. Hello. Welcome back again to another noonday edition of Sol Excalibre on the 9th of the 9th, 2019. Stop screen sharing that now after it failed to do what I wanted and didn't play through quite properly. And I've been trying to take advantage of the free trial period on this service that's normally from from these guys, StreamYard, because they've given me a free trial up until the end of tonight. I think it ends, where you can make full use of the full functionality of the software. So I've been trying various things, and one of the things I tried was to upload that little intro clip so that I could play it directly rather than having to screen share it, so that hopefully it would play correctly and you'd hear the audio great and blah, 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 and it just wouldn't upload. It kept giving me a message saying maybe there's a connection problem, which there isn't, but yeah, for whatever reason it wouldn't work. So I tried screen sharing it again and you get lag effect. Oh well, never mind. Hello everyone in the chat room. I can see chat room on there and go back to that screen. I've got the chat room in front of me on the control room screen. Hello. I'll do a quick shout out. Crypto Callus, hello, hello. And Linda Cloud, hello. Lots some Tatfro, hello mate. And Dave Iron, hello. And the Dot, the cannabis-based life form, hello. Yes, that is Jakar from Babylon 5, I think. That's the avatar Gary's chosen for tonight. Stewie, hello. And Apple Charlotte, hello, hello. Oh, like I keep saying all the time, I'll try and keep one eye on the chat. If you've got any questions, put them in there. Hopefully I'll spot them. Hopefully I will. Now I've got it right on the screen in front of me. I've been trying to keep an eye on it, but I'm still not catching everything I know, because I get into a flow and I'm talking about stuff and then I miss things because I'm focusing on what I'm rambling about. Right, anyway, yeah, notice got background banner, and I can play with other banners like you will be assimilated, and new style functionality that gives me options to talk about other things and also include imagery if I wanted to do like a lot of people do, that typical kind of PowerPoint presentation with included graphics to represent what you're talking about or to show evidence or examples of what you're talking about. But and that's just one of the main ones from the intro that I usually play. But anyway, yes, let's talk about what I was going to talk about on this 9th of the 9th, 2019. Do you like all the nines? It just so happens to be as well on Wednesday when we do the reality chat that Peter hosts on his channel, reality chat channel. It will be the 11th. So I'm sure we're going to talk somewhat about that the 11th of the 9th, 9/11, and it just so happens to be some other sort of interestingly coincidental date combinations recently. Today being the 9th of the 9th of the 19. And at the moment, the push towards warfare just keeps increasing day after day, week after week. So the 19, is that going to come back again? We're going to see another load of the younger generation, another whole swathe of the younger generation sent off into conflict zones, into war, to either sacrifice their lives outright, or, as quite common in modern warfare, to sacrifice a limb or their mind in one way or another, becoming damaged with PTSD and other problems or addictions that can grow out of that PTSD. But yeah, basically a whole swath of a generation getting consumed by the war machine in one way or another, either outright destroyed, their lives taken, or turned into damaged goods. I know that sounds derogatory. I don't mean it derogatory, but the system will see them as being damaged goods. So their productivity in terms of fueling the structure become less. But they've given from their service. They've made a large donation up front, basically. So you would think the system would take care of people that offer such great amounts of their own energy to perpetuate it, but that's usually not the case. But anyway, before I digress too far, I know I digress a lot, it's a habit. Hello, Andy Manchester, just seen you pop up in the chat. And Lotsam Tapfro, hello, I think I said hello to you earlier, didn't I? Yeah. Sorry, I was just rechecking the chat before I carry on. To get into talking about why I put the subtitle as it is this evening, and some of the things that have been happening recently that have been in the news, in the media, in the culture, and those memes, those ideas and archetypes that are perpetuated in the cultural media. Yeah, well, being the week of 9/11, there's been some talk of that whole incident and going back to that kind of information. James Corbett of the Corbett Report has done a lot of coverage of it over the years, and recently he's been recovering or re-uploading some of his mini documentaries, video presentations about the whistleblowers around 9/11. Because often in the mainstream media, in the general populace, there is this given impression that there are no whistleblowers. There can't possibly be a conspiracy, because if there was, there'd be whistleblowers, and there's no whistleblowers. It's like, no, there are. There's quite a few of them. It's just that the mainstream media doesn't really talk about them. Therefore, you get left with this impression that there aren't any. And the general representatives of the system itself and the lie that was that event are happily going around perpetuating that misconception that, oh no, there's no evidence, there's no whistleblowers, there's no testimony, there's nothing. No, stop looking. Even though recently there was a new report, I think we mentioned it last Wednesday, a new report from a university study group looking at the incident of the fall of WTC-7, which was the third building that fell on that day, that the media, again, often likes to just forget about or try and ignore and not mention. But yeah, the recent study that showed that there's no way that fell according to the NIST explanation. It fell because of a catastrophic failure of all the support limbs of that structure, because it was a steel-framed building. All of them would have been going at once, which, without directly saying it, implies explosive demolition techniques. There is the sheer astronomical chances, the probabilities, percentages, etc., that happened just by small fires, or just by random chance that all of a sudden a building just decides, no, I've had enough for staying upright, I'm going to fall down at free fall speed. No, don't be silly. Stop being so childishly naive. Let's put it that way. Anyway, yeah, the description of the title in the subtitle, or the subtitle in the info box. I know it sounds a bit disturbing. I was having second thoughts about writing it the way I did, but I think it needs to be said that way to make sense with what I'm trying to imply, or my intention of what I'm trying to explain. The perception of this situation only really makes sense if I use language like that, so it sounds a bit disturbing. Gas chamber womb. But yeah, the title is Dawning of the Age from the Gas Chamber Womb. I could have put New Age, but I don't think that would have helped explain, and probably just would have added other connotations that people would have had difficulty with, or it would have caused a sticking point, because people would get fixated on New Age. Is it really the New Age, or is this just a furtherance of the old age that has been dominant for however many thousands of years? It becomes a moot point. Yeah. It's the New Age this year. Next year it will be another New Age, and another New Age, and another. Yeah, you see what I mean? It becomes a silly semantic argument. Dawning of the age. Hopefully, I'm highly confident that the majority of people who come and listen to me and us talk about this kind of stuff, you're fairly aware, quite aware of a lot of the stuff that's going on in recent times that is, in one way or another, or can be in one way or another, described as a dawning of the age. We are going through major changes globally, societally. The whole of the experience of the human race is going through a major change in the way we live, the way we interact with each other, what we expect of this experience we call life, etc., etc. That's emanating in so many different ways now. Through technology, primarily, is the sort of vanguard that most people connect to, in the sense of that perception that the world is changing. Look how much it's changed. You know, now we've got all this technology that does this, that, and the other way. The world is rapidly becoming the future. But that could also be described as a common perception of people as they age. As you get older, the world no longer looks like it did when you were a little child, so you see it as if this is great cycle turning, great change of the ages kind of effect. I'd agree with that with only a small amount. I think that holds true in general in most generations, but then periodically there are major changes that occur that affect society in a radical way, cause major changes that ripple on through the rest of the existence of that society until it collapses in some form. So yeah, dawning of the age, do I need to say it any other way? I think it's pretty obvious that is kind of what's going on at the moment. We're going through major changes. A new way of living is being presented to the world, and some major expectations and demands are being built upon and pushed onto people to fit in with that change of the ages. You know, all the political correct kind of bullshit, and the adoption of certain ideologies, certain political principles. We could talk about Boris and all the silliness that's been going on in the UK the last week, but that's more about current news events and just the circus more than anything. But there has been that process of major change happening with, like I say, those expectations or demands, even though I would argue most of the demands have been given to people and they've been given the impression that they really want them. You know, do you really want faster internet via 5G, even though it's going to cause you harm? It's kind of like saying, do you want to experience a high, by losing one of your fingers? Is it worth it? So just your pinky finger, just your little finger, we'll just take your little finger, but you'll have this experience of this wonderful sensation. Ooh, would you do it? That's the kind of offer that's being made to people. But that's just one example of this new technology that's pushing forward. And I've ranted a long, long time about what I see as being the more obvious or genuine, deliberate intentions behind the rollout of that kind of technology. It's not really because they want you to have a nicer experience of looking at stuff on the internet. We want you to be able to download pictures faster, so we're going to try our hardest to spend all these billions and trillions of pounds and dollars and whatever other form of fiat currency to bring you this technology because we just care for you so much. Yeah, I'm digressing again. Get to the second part of that subtitle. The gas chamber womb. This is where it gets more into really the kind of analogy or allegory, the metaphor that I was trying to use to point out this perception. I think some people may already be sort of twigging onto what I'm pointing out. It's not that sort of cryptic. I'm talking about eugenics. And I felt this was something worth bringing up again in relation and in connection to the date around that event in 2001. Those now ominous symbols of the 911, the 9/11 have become representative of a great tragedy that affects the entire world in multiple ways. But it also connects through to a thread that goes back into what for the usurpers, the people that like to think they are in control of everything and like to press buttons and pull levers, their principle, foundational principle of eugenics, because they've been living an experience for thousands of years now where they have been constantly told by others and told by each other and self-assured through their own delusion that they are different, they are above everybody else. Everybody else is chattel, cattle, pawns, soldiers, slaves. They're above you. And if they are, they have to make sure they stay that way, which includes monitoring and administering to their procreation so that their bloodlines or however else they self-identify their claims to being the chosen or the greater than everyone else, whatever they call themselves, is up to them, the control and the monitoring and the administration of how and who they breed with and the progeny and the success of those progeny and whether they get put into positions of power that are then used to further certain agendas. And we can talk about people who, if we truly lived in a meritocracy, which often is supposedly maybe not the totality of what we live in, but it's often argued and implied that, well, if you think you're better than them, why don't you run for office? And, it's a meritocracy, the best man for the job or best woman, or let's be politically correct, best non-gendered, non-pronounced, whatever you are, that table leg over there could be the president of the United States. Yeah. Is it a meritocracy? You look upwards and it becomes more like, as other people have called it and sort of brought back that word, the kakistocracy, in other words, ruled by the worst amongst us. But they have this fix, whoever they are, whether you think they're the worst or the best, whichever is a moot point in reference to the fact that they have been, they are and they have been and they continue to be obsessed with the principle of eugenics. And in so many different ways, that has permeated into society. and has been utilized in many different forms and has been implemented in many different forms. And this brings me now to why I wanted to use the wording in that title, in that phrase, the way I did. Because for most of us, similar to like the picture in the background, you know, we're given the impression when we're younger, if you're in one of the Western NATO allied countries, you've gone through a similar indoctrination program in terms of your history, recent history that you've been taught about. And one of those things that you usually get taught about is how during the Second World War, there was some kind of extermination that included the use of what they called gas chambers to kill off people en masse, to make it like, well, not like, but to turn it literally into an industrialized mass process that could be utilized to get rid of lots of people as quickly as possible. In other words, mass genocide. We're taught about the gas chambers during the Second World War, and it's applied with that implication. Sometimes you're told directly about some of the kind of alleged ideological ideas of the bad guys, the Nazis, as being about eugenics and pure blood and their ethnicity and stuff like that, and therefore that's why they decided to start wiping out certain people, certain other ethnic groups, because they wanted to get rid of that bloodline, or etc., etc. Eugenics might be eugenics applied via mass genocide, but it's eugenics, and supposedly, allegedly, that's what they were basing their justifications on. And that's a general impression that certainly here in the UK, and like I said, most of the NATO Western allies, you're taught the same ideas, maybe presented to you in slightly different ways, maybe more stringently impressed upon you in certain areas of the world. So, for example, like in Germany, you can't question in any way at all what you're told, because if you do, that would be illegal and potentially you could be in trouble. You could end up in prison because it's illegal to try and question or contradict the information that is presented to you through education and through the media, etc. So gas chamber, I think most people get the idea of the gas chamber is connected to genocide, and the genocide usually is based upon an argumentation or just a claim of justification that stems from the idea of eugenics, and that somehow the people you're trying to get rid of are just intrinsically bad, or they're problematic in some form. So you just want to eradicate them, remove them from the gene pool, from the breeding stock. So why have I connected womb, gas chamber womb? And as I said, I was a bit unsure about whether to word it in that way, because my intention is not to suggest that women have a womb that can be used to gas chamber the fetus in the womb in vitro or something like that. Not at all. If anything, it is prior to that gestation period is more what I'm referring to. And this is where I'm trying to loosely, metaphorically and allegorically connect the ideas to a lot of the modern cultural media and ideologies, and even studies that supposedly come out of academic bodies that are leading people towards transgenderism, and that then leads towards transhumanism, and we're back into that pursuing technology. Technology is the vanguard of change. But that idea that you may not necessarily be the gender, the sex that you were born. So if you want to, you could possibly change it. You can have treatments, you can have surgery, you can do this, that, and the other, and you can be whatever you want. You stick a bit on here and a bit on there, and you can, just make it up as you go along. That narrative is most definitely intrinsically tied to transhumanism. I've argued this for years now, the idea being that like a process of desensitization they get people used to the idea that, well, the body is interchangeable. We can just chop and change it as we like. We can be whatever sex we want to be. We can make it look however we want to look. We can add horns. We can add lumpy bits. We can add extra bits. Well, it's only one step further to transhumanism. If you're going to start adding things into your body or chopping and changing the structure, the functionality of the body, then you might as well add something that supposedly, allegedly, will give you a boost in some way. So you want to run faster? Why not have robotic legs? Yeah, why not? Your body's interchangeable. You can chop and change it as much as you want. Look, there's people who change sex all the time. So one leads to the other. He's intrinsically tied together. He's connected. It begins with transgenderism. Get the word out. Body dysmorphia, gender dysmorphia. But that intrinsically ties to that separation of people's experience of the self, of the thing that is often referred to as, your inner self, your soul, your spirit, your energy, however people describe it. But that sense of self can be separated from the body, the sense of the body. That's what they're trying to do, so that then more people are likely to accept the offer, the commercialized offer of some kind of implant or extra limbs or whatever. Yeah. So in that process of transgendering, get the words out, that inevitably, for the people that go through that process, leads to sterilization. Sorry, guys, girls, whatever you are to begin with and decide you want to swap to something else, that's you removed from the gene pool. That's you genocided. They may not have killed you individually, but they've destroyed your potential to procreate, so they've just ended your line there. So there will be no more of you. No lineage from you. That's eugenics. Are you dumb enough to fall for the propaganda trickery to try and persuade you that this is perfectly normal and acceptable, a process of desensitization, such that you then agree to go through the process, and from the process the result is that you are sterilized, you can no longer naturally procreate? You've just been genocided. Your line has just been removed from the story of mankind. So as we're going into this new age, as this new age is dawning, a lot of the chaos that is going on at the moment is because we're going through that birth process of a change of the age, a change of the way we live and experience this world together. It is radically changing. And during that time, they are genociding an entire swathe of the newest generations. Since the 90s at least, really, if you start connecting the longer threads, this connects to family planning and the feminist revolution and the demand, the suffragettes of full emancipation, and on and on and on it goes. And I'm not ignoring or denying people's claims of victimization or exclusion from certain rights that they should have had in the first place, etc., etc. That's part of how this system works, to control people in different groups and demographics. So I'm not denying that often people who looked for things such as women's emancipation, slaves' emancipation, etc., they should have had that right in the first place. So I'm not denying that. But the way the system has used those events to fuel itself, and those events were more often than not were created and enabled and allowed to happen, actively encouraged to happen in many ways, because they were part of the narratives that have led us towards where we are now. So now the need for emancipation led through the radical feminist changes of the 60s and 70s through into the neo-feminism and what do they call it, intersectional gender politics and all this kind of shit that we've now got in this current contemporary times, in these current contemporary times. Each time the extremes have been pulled further and further. And that is, unfortunately, I feel, part of the process of this mechanism of this control structure that, like the butterfly that they like to use as part of their psychological manipulation, they go through processes of metamorphosis where the old version has to be cocooned and destroyed. So you go through this psychological process of they start building walls around themselves, and once they've got that exclusion achieved, what is inside the shell turns in on itself and consumes and self-destroys and basically pulls itself down. It destroys its own empire, and then out of the rubble the butterfly is birthed, and they rebuild something that, although carries on a lot of the original foundational ideas, it redecorates them, redresses them, and hides them behind a new illusion. So the process just begins again, and every so many generations, or every so many years, they go through that process again. Some people would argue, I can argue, that some of this is part of a process that some of them feel is necessary because of the sheer way that reality operates, in that you have the constant, undeniably everlasting supply of energy, but there is a process of entropy within the three-dimensional experience. So things are constantly being created, but as soon as they're created, they begin to decay. So in that process of decay, every so often there is a equalizing return of the system, a cycle, a revolution, a revolution. So once the process of creation has happened, you get the slow, so you'll get an ascent, a rise to power, which you can see in the growth of empires and nations and even individuals, etc. And then there will be a decline. So they want to be able to control and manage all the aspects of that so that they remain in power. That means you don't only control the birth, you're not only the founding fathers that write all the laws and rules and say we're going to do it this way. You also have ideas and preparations for and plans and narratives to steer towards the end point so that you can control the ending, ready to step in to take control again or to keep control. So it perpetuates that you remain in power, you remain in charge, in control. So at the moment, a lot of people are still under the impression that eugenics, along with genocide, because the two really go together. There is no friendly or nice way to do eugenics. That eugenics is something historical. It's of the past. It's those naughty people who had silly, old-fashioned prehistoric ideas about what was good for everybody else, and they were the ones doing all this nasty, horrible shit. Doesn't happen now. Now we're all advanced, civilized people with super technology. You can ask Alexa whether eugenics is a good idea. Maybe that's worth somebody doing it. If somebody's got one of those crazy devices, I highly suggest you don't have one. But yeah, somebody ask it that kind of question and see what it replies. It'll probably just pull up articles off Google just to read out to you. But anyway, another digression. So most people have that impression that it's something historical. It doesn't happen anymore. It doesn't happen anymore. It's not going on at the moment. Blah blah blah. I would argue that they are just naive. They're naive. They're probably quite unaware of the goings on around the world, or they are choosing to be unaware. They are ignorant because ignorance is a choice. And even more so with the modern technology and the environment that we have available to us via the internet, ignorance really is a choice. And it does create a sense of strength, a sense of tribalistic unity, but that is an illusion that is managed and controlled by those people that allow us to utilize this technology in the way we do. But it's not historical at all. There are various forms of eugenics happening right now all across the world, and certainly in the Western NATO allied nations. Do you like the idea of synthetic meat? You know, we could spend a long time just having that discussion about whether you should or shouldn't eat meat and all that kind of question that's been dragged out for so fucking long. Well, I'm trying to look beside that. You know, you leave that to one side because I think that's a separate discussion. But in terms of the food supply that is going to be available to the general populace, synthetic meat, does it sound like a really good idea? If you happen to look into it, dig a bit deeper, you find out the kind of things it's made out of and how it's made, and the unhealthy aspects of it start to become more and more apparent, and the lack of nutritional value becomes more and more apparent. So you're left with this question, like, why are they trying to feed us this shit? Why are they pushing out all this propaganda about how great it is? And, oh, you got to stop eating burgers because you're burning the Amazon down every time you eat a burger. Really? You want us to start eating that shit? And then it goes a step further. And now, in the process of desensitization, you get in the suggestions, the broaching of the idea that, well, you know, what about cannibalism? What are all these cultural taboos and historical taboos about cannibalism? Yeah, why not? Soylent Green, it's great. It's got baby flavor. Yummy. Why not? And slowly desensitizing to these attempts at a new form of society where in many ways a lot of those sci-fi stories and ideas are coming true day after day, week after week. Your body's automatically added to the donor list now here in the UK. Now you have to actively opt out if you don't want to have your corpse used as a donor if they choose to, you know, if they think they can get something useful out of you. Then why not? You know, it's only one step further to say, well, you know, why not just throw him in the mincer and turn him into burgers? You know, have a cookie burger. Only after I'm dead, mind you. It's not much further. What are you going to do with all the dead bodies? You know, the cemeteries are overflowing. We have all these problems with all these corpses everywhere. Trying to get a funeral booked takes longer and longer and longer because the bureaucracy and logistics of finding a slot, you know, finding a space where your grave is going to go. More and more people are choosing to be cremated. More and more, you know, there is that subtle background propaganda that you don't want to have a traditional burial. You want to do something different that in one way or another means your body's going to be less of a problem for the town planners when they're drawing up the latest extension to your suburb. And we can dig further into elements of what are eugenics that are going on at the moment. Various conflict zones. So, you know, I made mention of it earlier with a whole swathe of a generation being persuaded that the only chance you got of any possible career prospects in life is to join the military. Service equals citizenship, to quote Starship Troopers. And they're persuaded that this, yeah, well, you might lose a limb, but don't worry, you'll have, you know, a good mark on your record, and you'll have a employment history that the general populace will respect because you've paid your dues in the service of Queen and country. You've gone to a foreign land and thrown explosives at other people you've never met before, and you happen to lose a leg. Oh well, never mind, you can get a job in security at some corporation somewhere. How many of them die in that conflict, in that process of the conflict? A steady level of eugenics. So you got the food industry, you got the big pharma chemical industry feeding people corrosive, caustic chemicals that are basically meant to turn them into sick little piggies that can constantly be milked to feed the system. The food industry I've sort of mentioned, talking about synthetic meat and cannibalism. Psychologically, the rise in depression and suicide rates. Financial constraints which add to those psychological problems. On and on the list goes. And at the same time, there is that level of degeneracy as society desperately seeks for a new experience, because now the connections of the web are spread around the globe such that you can experience life from so many different perspectives. If you have the ability to empathize and have compassion for others, you can have life experiences that are totally different to yours, and you can see it firsthand. You may not necessarily be individually having true gnosis experience of that event or whatever it is that people are doing, but you have an interest in something. You can find other people have the same interests. You can look at what they're looking at. You can hear their stories of their own life experiences of going through different events or ideas, pursuing certain ideologies or concepts. On and on and on it goes. As more and more of that information network connects together, and you have a greater and greater ability to see life from so many different angles, to vicariously have so many different experiences, then you become maybe not truly void of, but you become denuded of the value of your own experiences, such that there is this rise in a desire to seek new experiences, and those searching look for more and more extremes to find new experience, and the system is encouraging that. That inevitably, that by its very method, leads to degeneracy, because people will just seek experience for experience's sake. So it will get to the stage of absolute outright degeneracy, of self-destructive behavior. And I don't want to go through a laundry list of examples of that kind of thing, but you can find that quite readily. So at what point do you line up these different elements and examples and evidences and see how, added all together, that's a process of eugenics? It may be, in some ways, it could be called a slow kill. The numbers may be considered too low to be truly genocide, but who's arbitrating over the values? Where is the demarcation line of what value equals what? At what point do you go from 100 dead to 101 dead, and now all of a sudden it becomes genocide? That's an unpleasant argument and perspective to look at this from. But to go back to how I'm connecting that to as well, one other thing, I'll share this one, and hopefully we'll be able to play the audio through. And I'll mute my mic for a sec while I'm playing it.
I lost my son,
My nephew,
my uncle,
my son.
on September 11th, 2001.
Most people don't know that a third tower fell on September 11th.
World Trade Center 7, a 47-story skyscraper, was not hit by a plane.
Although the official explanation is that fire brought down Building 7.
Over 1,200 architects and engineers have looked into the evidence
and believe there is more to the story.
Bring justice to my son.
my uncle,
My nephew.
my son,
and thousands of others who died on September 11th.
Go to buildingwhat.org.
I don't know if that's my connection causing things to lag a little bit. It might be. That was a video clip, an advert that was put out in the USA back in 2011. And that, let me just grab the link. If I can, it should let me, hopefully the Google beast will allow me to post that. Is it not posting? Okay, try it on the other chat page. Sorry folks, I'm distracted concentrating on trying to do this. I was just trying to put the link to that video in the live chat. But it's funny how things all start to lag out and slow down whenever you start talking about certain subjects, certain events, certain dates. The 9th of the 9th, 19. Oh yeah, by the way, they're having that other vote, a second vote on a snap election tonight in Parliament. Yeah, it says in the StreamYard chat, it's saying, having trouble connecting to the chat. Please check your connection. But hopefully it showed up. I posted it in the chat I've got open on Firefox, so hopefully that's gone through. But it's just a link to that video I just showed. It's a video that's been on my channel since 2011. It's got a total of 58 views. A whole 58 views. Astounding the reach that it's got. Yeah, I could take the time now and do all the usual spiel that people do of, if you like what we're doing, click like, click subscribe, share it, you know, all that good stuff. There's no merchandise to buy or whatever, you know, but it's about the information. And that's the thing, 58 views. That's been on my channel since 2011. So for 8 years, that video has been there available. And back then I did do all the thing of like sharing it on different platforms. I shared it on Facebook and blah, yeah. Shadow banned, cul-de-saced, repressed. help, I'm being oppressed. But it is deliberately sidelined to the general populace. I'm quite confident in saying that I know I am shadow banned. I know my channel is cul-de-saced. When people who have over 100,000 subscribers, really graceful channel, I can't remember what she got up to, it's well over 100,000. And she did a little video where she gave me a shout out, and she left it because she's got a good habit of giving all the links to the stuff she's talking about and the articles and things that she references in her presentation. So she gave a link out to my channel in there. Out of that, I gained a handful of subscribers, and that gain, which occurred several months ago now, has subsequently gone back down again. So my subscriber numbers haven't changed for over a year. They've been around 1290 something. They go like 1291 and then up to 1296 and then back down again. And it just does the same constantly. It's just this little life blip, you know, like the machines in the hospital. Beep, beep. It's just this tiny, just about alive, just about. And I'm quite confident that it's not because of me. I know that the way I present myself and the kind of things we talk about and blah, blah, blah. I know some people don't like what I'm doing. It's not their cup of tea. It's not their style. It's whatever. They're not really interested. Yeah, fair enough. But out of the laws of probability, it does not calculate. It does not square up when you look at a reference from somebody that's got over 100,000 subscribers. That means there's going to be a few thousand of the people that listen to her stuff will at least come and look at my channel and check it out. Out of that number, a few will be interested in what we're doing here. So the suggestion via YouTube that I've got 5 or 6 subscribers which have subsequently gone and it's gone back to the same level as it was, sorry, that doesn't add up to the laws of mathematics and probability. No. And that's just one case where I can look at numbers and follow things that are happening and come to a conclusion based on that. But there's many other examples through the years of my channel being where it is, where I can see how there's no way that's not natural. That's not organic. I know I'm a bit of a whatever people want to label me as, you know, but that does not add up. I know I'm not that abhorrent. No, sorry. I shouldn't even need to apologize. It's just a no. But in reference of why I wanted to show that video clip, because even now, to this day, it's 2019. We're coming up to the 8th anniversary of the events on that day in 2001. And yet still, many people of the general populace, people in general, don't even know about Building 7, let alone some of those details that came out via those bereaved relatives looking for retribution from the system. And that's why they put that advert out. They were hoping to bring court cases, litigation, etc., to try and at least get their relatives recognized as victims, and that possibly could have led to compensation or something like that. But the main point was to get it accepted by the system, entered into the record, as it were, that their relatives were victims of that event. Whereas often they're just described as casualties. They weren't targets per se, which is completely untrue. When you start digging through all the information about 9/11, the official story is absolute twaddle. If I can do it quickly, I'm going to read something out to you. I'll probably share it, actually, show it on screen. Although it is just a text file, so it's not like you're going to see anything fantastic. Mr. Corbett, James Corbett, did a kind of video version of this many years ago, which you might be able to still find on his channel, although you might have to dig for it a bit to find it, because that video is being shadow banned, cul-de-saced. But this was a little thing that was posted on the internet back in about 2010, 2011, I think, by somebody calling themselves Awake in Cleveland. I'll just read it out because, you know, if you believe the official story, maybe you want to just think a bit more, ponder a little bit more on some of these coincidences. How many coincidences does it take to make a conspiracy? Anyway, I'll shut up and read it out. The official version of 9/11 goes something like this. Directed by a beardy guy from a cave in Afghanistan, 19 hard-drinking, coke-snorting, devout Muslims enjoy lap dances before their mission to meet Allah. Using nothing more than craft knives, they overpower cabin crew, passengers and pilots on 4 planes, and hangover or not, they managed to give the world's most sophisticated air defense system the slip. Unfazed by leaving their how to fly a passenger jet guide in the car at the airport, they mastered the controls in no time and scored direct hits on 2 towers, somehow causing 3 to collapse completely. Our masterminds even managed to overpower the odd law of physics or two, and the world watches in awe as steel-framed buildings fall symmetrically through their own mass at free-fall speed for the first time in history. Despite all their dastardly cunning, they stupidly give their identity away by using explosion-proof passports, which survive the fireball undamaged and fall to the ground, only to be discovered by the incredible crime-fighting sleuths at the FBI. Meanwhile, down in Washington, Hanny Hanjaw, having previously flunked 2-man Cessna flying school, gets carried away with all the success of the day and suddenly finds incredible abilities behind the controls of a Boeing. Instead of flying straight down into the large roof area of the Pentagon, he decides to show off a little. Executing an incredible 270-degree downward spiral, he levels off to hit the low facade of the world's most heavily defended building, all without a single shot being fired or ruining the nicely mowed lawn, and all at a speed just too fast for modern equipment to capture on video. Later, in the skies above Pennsylvania, so desperate to talk to loved ones before their imminent death, some passengers use sheer willpower to connect mobile calls that otherwise would not be possible until several years later. And following a heroic attempt by some to retake control of Flight 93, it crashes into a Shanksville field, leaving no trace of engines, fuselage, or occupants, except, of course, for the standard issue Muslim terrorists' bandana. Further south in Florida, President Bush, our brave commander-in-chief, continues to read My Pet Goat to a class full of primary school children, shrugging off the obvious possibility that his life could be in imminent danger. In New York, World Trade Center leaseholder Larry Silverstein blesses his own foresight in insuring the buildings against terrorist attack only 6 weeks previously, while back in Washington, Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, and Paul Wolfowitz shake their heads in disbelief at their own luck in getting the new Pearl Harbor catalyzing event they so desired to pursue their agenda of world domination. And finally, not to be disturbed too much by reports of their own deaths, at least 7 of our 19 suicide hijackers turn up alive and kicking in mainstream media reports. The end of the official story, the official narrative of the 9/11 event. So, I know I've read that out before years ago when we've done similar talking about the event when it's about the time like now, yeah. But I thought it was worth reading out again. And while talking about that principle of eugenics that has now permeated society and was helped into position by the initiation of a process of radical change in society. Because that's a lot of what that event gave as a result to the system, to those that are writing these narratives. It gave them an immense amount of justification, like the claims about gas chambers in Germany. It gave them an immense amount of justification to write the narratives the way they've been writing them, to form the script the way it is, and to make the claims that they do about what occurred. And I do not believe that a large portion of the population is still under the delusion of accepting that official narrative. I don't think most people do. I think many people have difficulty with moving beyond the thought that the official story is a lie, and they tend to shy away from that pursuit. They don't want to go down that path because they know it will lead to other things falling apart, other illusions, other bullshit of the system becoming revealed. So they don't pursue it full stop. They choose to remain in ignorance. But I think a lot of people do. They may not necessarily keep pursuing it. They may look a little bit, they may take a peek. Got another particular image that I thought was relevant. They like to take a peek beyond the illusion. But when they start to see the sheer immensity of the lie and how it permeates through so many layers, through every layer of society, really, right down to the foundations of the bullshit that we're told about how supposedly the way the world works, etc., that they, again, willfully choose to just let it be and not pursue it any further. And they go back to other distractions, other things to occupy their minds or to make them feel like they are actually achieving something in life. So they concentrate on their career, or they concentrate on earning money so they can buy a bigger house and more iPads and whatever the fuck else that you're supposed to want now. Meanwhile, as time ticks by, the memory of that event gets more and more lost and polluted. The memory of that actual event. In other words, eyewitness testimony, people's direct gnosis experience of what happened at that time, either on site at the event or from a distance watching it as it was presented to us by the media. It's all relevant. But as time ticks by, that's getting lost until eventually it will become a similar situation to so many other alleged conspiracy craziness that it's just alluded to of like, oh, we'll never know, it'll never be figured out, it doesn't matter, forget about it, the world's the way it is now, all that shit's historical, just like eugenics. It's all historical bullshit. But that was a key event that enabled a massive amount of the narratives that we're now experiencing to be extended, to be pushed out, to be pressed upon the general populace such that it becomes a norm through a process of saturation and desensitization, hyper-normalization, as Adam Curry, is it? I think, no, I'm always getting them two mixed up. Adam Curtis, as he presented it in that idea of his documentary Hyper-Normalization. So now we're at the stage where the coming generation is going to be missing a large number of its possible potential population because of the success of some of these propaganda narratives that are persuading a lot of people to not have children, to not naturally procreate, or to make some other choice that is, even beyond me at the moment, because as technology keeps changing and as these ideas push further and further towards extremes, the possibilities of what the fuck they're going to come out with next, I don't know. I've got quite a good imagination, but potentially this is just going to get really, 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 really weird. So is that not eugenics? Was 9/11 a tool, another data point in that process of them persuading the mass of people that there is a difference between the two, that there are a group who are the betters and then there is everybody else? And the betters have decided that they will use methods of eugenics against us to control the population, supposedly for your own good. They will feed you your own compatriots. One of the questions that I thought of including, but it would have required more digging into details, and I'm rambling off as it is, I thought it'd just be another potential side tunnel, was the rise in the number of abortions. If you take aborted babies as being part of the global death count, each nation's mortality rate, if you included aborted babies in that, then it would be the highest cause of death in almost every nation. Probably globally, it's the highest cause of death. And then that connected to them now talking about and suggesting ideas such as cannibalism, even, not forgetting the reality that already exists, that many of those fetal remains get processed into the system in one way or another. Some are used for scientific research, some are used for food and pharmaceutical industrial processes. So in other words, are we not already committing cannibalism by producing the mass-produced products that they are putting onto society, that they are forcing onto shop shelves? Because they do force it. It is a corporatist system. There is no real opportunity of true choice. There is a managed number of choices and availability. control the flow of resources, which includes information and includes people, and you can manage the delusion of separation and the numbers available of resources. So in other words, you can manage the concept of scarcity. So when you need to, you can make it seem like something's scarce, and that rises prices, and you can use that to reflect financial markets, and on it goes. I mentioned things like weather manipulation over the last couple of weeks in relation to the Dorian hurricane and how often that is utilized to affect global food markets, etc. It's just one possible way it can be used. But anyway, eugenics, Soylent Green is babies. I'm not trying to suggest that this is on a scale that it has been in the past in other instances of mass warfare or mass genocide, etc. Maybe not, but I think a lot of the numbers are well hidden and disguised and presented to the public in a way that makes it seem like it's acceptable. It's collateral damage. As Madeleine Albright said it, 500,000 Iraqi children. Yeah, we think it was worth it. My latest handheld device was worth 500,000 children's lives. Again, are we not already in a system of eugenics? It may be well disguised, but it is what it is. And until you can say that, until you can see that, until you can point at it and call it out for what it is, then it will just keep building its delusion and its layers of deception, and you'll be pushed further and further away from ever discovering your own true self. This is another element that I did want to include, but again, it will potentially lead to a lot of further discussion. So I just want to add it in as kind of like I mentioned. I've talked about it in different ways over the years, but the event of 9/11 was very much geared to be a psychological event. It wasn't just about creating a geopolitical justification for the war of terror. It was also a deliberate ceremonial enactment to create psychological, spiritual, energetic effects in everybody who witnessed it or is presented with it. So it was there to deliberately to create a psychological schism, a trauma, destruction of the temple is another way to look at it because of its occultic connections. So that is the end of the old, and they've been busy building the new. That new is starting to become apparent now. We're at the point where the head is crowned. The head is already crowned. Now they're waiting for the rest of the body to come forth. The body is being built now, and most of it is being revealed with things like the rollout of 5G, etc. And the Brexit situation connects into it as well. Hopefully that may have helped a little bit. I know sometimes I'm throwing things in that potentially can have quite a lot of connotations or a need for further investigation, etc., or could extend into multiple hours of conversation for their own need, their own reasoning. But hopefully that might help point some more things out for people. I don't think it was just an event of terrorism. It wasn't. It was far more than that. It was the marking of a change of the ages and the beginning of a process that is happening now, that is currently going on. We've only got 2 years until 2021, when a lot of the major agendas are supposed to be done and in the world, extant in the world, in the societies that we're sharing. And most of them are very, very close to that point. So things like social crediting, etc. Don't think it's just for crazy dictatorships like China. It's already here. The infrastructure to enable it is already here. It is already being used in certain limited ways, and it's going to get used more and more directly and more openly as the next couple of years go past. That's just one data point. So maybe we could call it a time where we talk about that event that needs to be talked about. Yeah, I get it that a lot of people are sick and tired of hearing about it, but if we don't keep reminding people, then the information gets lost, forgotten, polluted, corrupted, malformed, and then the next generations have got fuck all hope of doing anything with the situation. As we're moving forward, well, it's a bit of a manipulative statement. But as we're moving forward, you have the choices of what you choose to do and what you choose to put your energy into. The system, the people in control or think they're in control, the usurpers, as they usually refer to them as, I think it's probably one of the better labels for them. They like to think they're in control of everything. They like to think they're in control of where everything is going. But their illusion of control relies on your acceptance and acquiescence to go along with it. Because we're all the ones that build the pyramid. They don't. They just stand there and point and say, do this, put that there, put that there. Yeah, we're the ones that actually make the bricks and cut the stone and move it into place and blah, blah, blah. So at some point, when enough people realize that and start doing something else, their direction can be changed. So being aware of this kind of stuff, it's, as I've said a lot recently, this is not about you being in fear. This is about helping you get through that fear, because the fear is just that. It's a fear. Unless it's actually happening to you directly, you know, it's just a fear. It's a projection into a possibility. So project your energy into other possibilities. They want to turn it into a super dystopian technocratic state. Start doing things in a different direction. I think I'll shut up now because I've ranted a bit, and I know it's a bit all over the place in different directions. But that was the main thing I was hoping to get across. Please do not forget how that one particular event is very much tied to and reliant on the principle of eugenics. And if you think eugenics has gone away, it absolutely has not. It is existent in the world today. It may be more subtly hidden, but it is active, and it is something that you should be aware of so that you can make choices to avoid it, to sidestep it whenever you can, and to not let future generations be destroyed before they even have the possibility to come into the world.
Yeah. This is exactly what that reminded me of. When you said, you know, what shape will it take in the future? Well, now they're putting up billboards. They're literally celebrating, low birth rates. So it's kind of like, well done, the people in Portugal, for only having 1.2 birth rate. You know, I've been to Portugal, you know, they're fairly Catholic people, so I'm surprised about that, yeah? And I would imagine it's kind of like birth control caught on late. A lot of people having one child and saying we'll have another one later on, austerity. It's driven by economics. It's not, you know, it's got nothing to do with people being responsible. You know, people want 2 children.
Yeah, but they can't afford it. Yeah, that's a financial constraint put in place deliberately to make the environment such that people look at the situation and think, well, we'd love to have more kids, but we just can't afford to, so we won't.
And the kids that do come along, they sterilise them.
Yeah.
Every
opportunity they will,
Yeah, I mean, the psychological manipulation just is off the scale now with what they're doing with the kids.
Yeah,
and that's part of that eugenics. Sorry, Gary, go on.
I was going to say the population bump. When they show the population, there is always a bump going from about 1900 when, a lot of people were dying about 50 or 60, you know, and all of a sudden you've got a whole generation more people, the old. Yeah, so you always get a bump in the population there. But, 2 children is, the natural replacement number.
2.4.
Yeah, and the dog.
Yeah, really, you're talking 3. If you want an actual population to grow, if you want a population to actually grow, you need at least 3 children per family.
And,
if you want the numbers to stay steady, to stay perfectly equal, near enough perfect, yeah, but equal, then 2.4, 2.5.
yeah, and give them 2 diet Pepsi drinks a day, or fizzy drink. So they
Some
start
Red
attaining.
Bull. Yeah.
Yeah, 2 per day, and then they'll only live till about 40.
And the point 4, that's basically what, that's the transgender one. Yeah? It's just like a
No,
point.
that actually is to account for accidental death. When you're looking at the statistics, population statistics, you're comparing births to deaths. Yeah, obviously you need 2 children to replace the 2 parents, but then you need more than the 2 to actually grow the population. But when you also take not only natural mortality rate, you take into account accidental or other, that could include warfare, then that's the 0.4 ratio, yeah, which is why you need more than just replacing the 2 parents to remain equal, to keep an equilibrium.
Another thing I noticed about this is it's almost black is white, shrink towards abundance. Having less children is the most pro-child action you can take. I mean, this is contradictions in the same sentence.
Yeah, ignorance is strength.
Exactly, and it's written like that, very close to it.
Oh, and it said, what is it, 10 billion is going to be on the planet soon, and that's so scary considering you probably fit about 100 billion on the planet, if not more. It's all bullshit in that sense, overpopulation. It's like I say, I mean, everything you've said tonight, Cookie, in the last hour, I mean, I've made a few notes, you mentioned everything, so it's like you've covered pretty much everything in there, really. I just put down a couple of bits, but it's just, the transhumanism thing being banging on about for years anyway, desensitization, the programming, and now we've got the synthetic foods, like you mentioned, synthetic meats, and the diet has been something they've really worked on a number on us, really, over the years to not give us the brain nutrients we need and stuff like that. Processed food, it's all links into eugenics. It's all part of, like, you're not going to be here long, or you're weaker than you should be. We should be stronger than we are mentally and physically, but they're not giving us that kind of nutrition anymore through things like the World Health Organization, who put things like Codex Alimentarius, said it again, but all part of that agenda to make the foods available to you, or even toxify them, tell you they're bad for you all of a sudden when you've been taking this stuff for years, and it has to be, monitored, or has to be licensed and all this bullshit, which they do with drugs, pharmaceutical drugs. So I
was just thinking as well, some of the evidence that's come out, that a lot of the kind of like it's often referred to as the slow kill idea when we're talking, the kind of eugenics, like the food industry and stuff like that. And for a long time, people say, if there is any truth to that, then it's a really slow way to do it. It's not like they're lining people up and shooting them, kind of thing. But the more evidence that has come out about how, when taken over multiple generations, when they've looked at studies like GMO and like the glyphosate kind of stuff, the pesticides and antibiotics they're putting in the food system, all this kind of stuff, the pollutants that they're adding, when they look at a single generation for health effects, and they can say, there's not really much of anything, it's negligible,
right now
damage is acceptable. But other studies have looked at generational effects. And by the time you get to the 3rd generation, most of the progeny of that generation are sterile and suffering extreme health effects like organ failure and tumors, cancerous tumors, all kinds of shit.
I don't know if it's the same study you saw, Cookie, is the same one I saw about the rats and the 3rd generations on, which were 90% disease rate within the 3rd generation of that were born on.
It takes 2 generations for the real impact to actually hit in that life form. They were doing it on rats, but that shows it takes a while for the toxins, the pollutants to affect the biological system to such a degree that you end up with just destructive effects. So that's why I was thinking that kind of gas chamber womb, this is like they've killed a nation off before they've even bothered taking weapons onto a battlefield. They don't need to round people up. You know, think of things like the Georgia Guidestones. People have this expectation that it's going to happen all of a sudden, like in a mass war with like the gas chambers, where supposedly they're going to round people up in number and send them into this machine that kills them.
Yeah.
Whereas the reality is, in 20 years' time, you're going to be looking at like, who do I know who's actually got children? Is there anyone that's got children? Who do I know that doesn't have cancer? Is there anyone that doesn't have cancer? And you're going to end up with even those children that are growing up in this newish, the two latest generations, the millennials and the newest ones, what they call in Generation Z. Yeah. As they're approaching adulthood, the millennials already are adults, but as the other generation approaches adulthood, how many of them are infected by this kind of psychological propaganda that they don't connect with themselves in any way whatsoever? They feel like their body is not theirs, all this other kind of shit. And their health is extremely poor because they're in this situation of being saturated with bad food, bad environmental conditions, bad medical care. They are going to be a generation of cripples.
There was a story coming out in the mainstream last week about fussy eaters, kids who were fussy eaters, and one particular kid went blind because all he would eat was crisps and something else, two like junk food things, and eventually went blind. And it was yeah. But that's another thing, like giving them, mothering the kids too much or too much choice or whatever, or they're just the way in which the food is presented to the parents, and they haven't got enough information about what is good for, because it's all sold in the way that it's sold, isn't it? It's packaged up as great healthy stuff, or it looks all right, so it'd be good. And people are on a, processed food diet rather than a whole food or, vegetable, fruit and stuff we would eat, during the war when we were probably more healthier. Because the rationing didn't have sugar,
A lot healthier because people didn't have that kind of stuff available to them, so they ate more natural food, and they were making use of stuff that was homegrown and shit like that. So yeah, hell of a lot healthier in general.
Yeah, and cancer rates weren't, the people had got cancer, but it wasn't as what we have now with all of the chemical soup and the plasma, the toxic plasma we live in, Yeah.
Well, it's I think for the latest generation, that's one of the main things that stood out to me is the combination of psychological problems combined with the adoption. I suppose you could call it the cyborg or cybernetic adoption of modern mobile technology. So the gadgets, the tablets, the screens, the amount of children I see every day where there's some kind of screen in front of their face from a very early age. You're talking even from like being a baby in a fucking crib. People are putting these devices in front of them. And to me, that we are going to get to a stage where you're going to have a whole generation of people that are going to have serious health effects, serious psychological problems, are going to be so disassociative in so many different ways, not only to their own body, but also to everything else that's going on around them, because their psyche is in this device. And they're not going to be able to comprehend living in however, form, whatever form. They're just not going to be able to do it without that connection being there. And via that connection, Big Brother, they've got their fingers in their heads. People, I wanted to say kids, but they're going to get older, they're going to become adults, and this is applicable to most people. It's not just age specific. I'm not being ageist here in that respect, but this is something where I think a lot of the general populace just don't realize where they're going to end up as this stuff progresses. I was thinking about it the other night. I listened to True Stream Media. They put up a couple of videos recently. Well, it's Melissa, the woman that did the videos recently. And she was talking about the social credit score system. And I was thinking the same kind of things along the lines of a lot of people just don't realize how intrinsically it is affecting their thinking and how they will have difficulty comprehending or thinking about anything that isn't formed and presented to them via the technology. So again, a lot of people have an expectation that there's going to be, you know, like Terminator, you know, one day all of a sudden all this shit's going to happen where robots are marching around shooting people and it's going to be the takeover of the machines. And that's the deliberate deception of the fictionalized presentation in the cultural media. Whereas the reality is there is this systematic creep of taking over your cognitive functions and your perception of reality. And in that, often True Stream Media, Melissa in particular, has often made reference to Philip K. Dick novels and whatever. The one they were talking about, the Penfield organ, which is this device in the stories that basically become the Blade Runner script, yeah, the Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. He's describing this device that they call the Penfield organ, which was this little electronic device where you could dial up different emotions and sensations. So if you wanted to feel happy, you'd dial up a certain code and that equaled happy. And if you wanted to feel melancholy, you know, because it's an experience. Remember what I was saying earlier about people desperately looking for experience? It's an experience. You sit there and they dial up melancholy and they experience that for a few hours, yeah. But what I was thinking about the other day with this generation that we have, where they have difficulty of even conceiving of experience within reality without the technical connection being there, then that means they already have a Penfield organ inserted cybernetically into their experience. Because you want to know what it's like to climb a mountain, or go on Instagram and have the experience that way and have that sensation. That's what the Penfield organ was supposed to be doing for people. And there they've given people this device that they're convincing them that it has more reality relevant to them than their actual real world experience. So they are vicariously having their experience of life through the device, which is a controlled medium and format. Therefore, it's like the Penfield organ controlling your experience.
And the fantastic joke of it all, the reason they became so numb was because they gave themselves into these machines in the first place.
Yeah.
And now the machine's going to sell back to them what they gave away to the machine. You know, it's perfect bloody confidence trickery, isn't it?
And all comes at a nice
Incorrect.
monthly cost as well. I was going to say a monthly cost involved, you know. It's not free.
Best thing to do is learn to groove on that outrage. Don't bite, refuse to pay for it. God, that's so good. Enjoy a bit of outrage. See if you can make it last a lifetime. Indignation.
You should enjoy the present, just like Bruce does. Wah! Bruce just fucking loves presents.
Yeah, don't look too far back, you'll get depressed. Don't look too far forward because you'll get anxious. You know, be a bit more in the middle there, and you know.
Well, I've always liked the nautical analogies, you know, using the references to like being out at sea and on a ship, in a vessel, etc. Because, you know, that's a lot of what this experience is like. And I could go on for many hours about that kind of esoteric connection. But just like in a vessel, you concentrate on what's happening on the vessel, because obviously you've got to look after, you know, you've got to trim the sails and adjust the rudder and blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, you have an eye on the horizon, looking out for storms, looking out for other shit that might damage or affect you, or maybe a nice island where you can stop and get some fresh coconuts. You're doing both at the same time. You live here now, in this moment, in this present, but you have the ability to utilize your perceptions and your brain, your cognitive abilities, to project into the future, so you can experience possibilities, you can plan, you can worry and fear. Yeah, but that's the negative part of the projection. And you can also go back in time, you can visit memories and stuff like that. You know, so really, we live in three worlds all at once. Yeah,
yeah, and you learn from those experiences as well, and you should learn and get, you know, more understanding of how to do things and not to do things as we grow and learn all the time. As you never stop learning, really, ever. Anyone says they know it all, it's lying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what Peter said there, just about if you look back, you get depressed. If you look forward, you get anxious. That's typical Buddhist thing about meditation. Yeah, the two things that stop you meditating are excitement, looking forward into the future, or sinking into sleep, negative emotions, which is the opposite way, looking backwards. Yeah, so looking backwards is the passive energy, and looking forwards is a little bit too much active energy. Yeah, it takes you out of yourself. Yeah, it's that mental hamster wheel spinning. Yeah? So it's another thing.
Let me I'll do a quick run down the chat room, see if it'll let me scroll back, and hopefully I won't miss anyone out. If you've joined in the chat since I last said hello everyone in the chat, and I did the same as you, especially when I was in me rambling. I'm sorry I didn't look at the chat, so if you threw any questions in or whatever, you have to ask why Building 7 was ready to be demolished. From some chat throw, I keep forgetting that I can actually put comments up on say. You have to ask why Building 7 was ready to be demolished. Yes. I think it has a lot to do with the collection of records and information that was stored in that building, and it was necessary for that to be wiped out for other things such as the missing trillions. There would have been a paper trail of evidence in that stored data that was in that building. In that building was the continuity of government, or one of the continuity of government departments for New York City. But that would have also included information and connections through to federal state information and data, because obviously, you know, the city wouldn't be expected to operate in a vacuum on its own. So things like that, yeah, takes a while to rig explosives. Yes, I think they were there as part of the building's construction, possibly. But there's also evidence to show that in a similar fashion to the main buildings, the World Trade Center 1 and 2, World Trade Center 7 had some service work done on it in the months leading up to the event. So things could have been rigged up during that time of them having work done in the building. Yeah. But certainly they had to be set up long before the day. There's no way that people could have run in and rigged it up on the morning of the event. No fucking way. So yeah, they had to be there beforehand. So you know, that opens up more holes in the rabbit hole as you dig in. Yeah. That's why, you know, I made mention about how some people will look and they see that once they open that first door, once they widen it so they can see through, they can see that there's just all these other doors that lead to more and more realize it. And they're like, no, I'll accept that the official story isn't completely true, but I don't want to look any further. Thank you very much.
Well, there's a quote there. I don't know if you'll pick it up off Stewie. He put a quote in from J. Edgar Hoover from 1956 saying the individual is handicapped by coming face to face with a conspiracy so monstrous he cannot believe it exists.
Yeah.
Because it is. I mean, 9/11 and all these things, you know, I mean, this was in 56, he said this, and then we had Kennedy say what he said not long after that, reaffirming those, you know, all that. So it's stuff they've talked about openly. And then over the last few years, as we've seen in this sort of environment where we're getting, especially the last 10 years, where people have been getting onto things and wanting to know things more, and we've seen the backlash of the system, you know, coming just as they say here on these quotes. You know, it's they want to come and they will shut you down or try to shut you down, and that's what they've been sort of doing their best, and the media's responded to that in a way where they've taken the truth stuff and turned it into shitty TV drama shows and stuff or whatever, and try to, you know, again, do their best to, you know, because this stuff's being talked about a lot, you see, so they have to sort of, you know, make the have the things set up to, you know, fire back or whatever to get people back on track with the mainstream narrative. So yeah.
Mass-produced YouTube channels talking about any old tat that supposedly, allegedly is somehow conspiracy or, you know, other weird topics. Yeah, they just talk about fucking Mandy-Fart effect.
Well, you mentioned subs before, now your subs haven't gone up, and it's the same, I think, with all of us who run these channels. You'll just see them just hover, whatever. Mine's only about 300 and odd, and it's been like that for years. You know, it's just never, you know, gone any, you know, and then you'll like you say, you'll get 5 and you'll lose 5, or you'll get 3, you lose 3, and that's how
it's
it seems
totally
to go.
unrealistic. It's just like, no, so that's not reality.
No, it's not.
That's not, you know, I know for some people they might try and say, oh, it's just you trying to deny what's going on because you're so crap and nobody wants to listen to you. You don't understand probabilities, do you? And the percentages of numbers and stuff like that. You can't make use of mathematics to think through this, can you? Because it just literally does not add up unless you include a calculation that says at some point they are removing a certain number automatically. That's the only way you would have years of being openly publicly available to the public and yet never actually gaining in subscription base. Because if you're there, it's like having a shop on the corner of a street. Maybe your street is really quiet, so you don't get a lot of traffic. But if you're there for 10 years, you're going to pick up customers, because every so often, it may not be busy, but every so often somebody's going to be walking past, and out of those numbers, a few of them are going to walk in your shop. So the numbers literally just don't reflect reality unless they're being fucked with.
And we know they shadow ban. We know they do all that anyway. They've admitted it. They've said openly. We've read out stories in the past about it, you know, where they've said that's what they do. So we know that that's how they operate. And it just seems like you say, just the lighter stuff, the rubbish stuff, is what they want you to be, you know, looking at.
I could do a video called the 7 Signs of Bullshit. And as long as, you know, I make it a laundry list thing, and I throw in a certain amount of video editing and formatting style, I have one of those big white round lights, so it just illuminates everything on my face. And I do some green screen, and maybe occasionally I can, you know, do something along the lines of throw in some branded catchphrases. So, you know, I could throw stuff like that up on the screen. You will be assimilated. You know, do that kind of branding formatting and talk about the kind of topics that they are implying that you're supposed to stick to, then yeah, it probably would gain subscribers. But be an adjutant within their own system, no, you are being suppressed because basically they don't want you in their marketplace. You are selling a product that is counter to theirs, so therefore you need to be pushed out like a turd. So the constant cul-de-sacking, shadow banning is for those people who are sort of in a zone where they might find it difficult to come up with some justification to actually shut you down, and at the same time, by shutting you down, they maybe make an example to the rest of the public that would be unhelpful to them. So rather than doing that, instead they just give this air of oppression, such that they're hoping you'll just get fed up and pissed off and leave. You know? And I mean, that's really, really more effective for people who are actually generating an income or trying to generate an income out of this environment, because the way they've cut that, you know, and curtailed it to such a degree that those people that were doing it for a monetary return are more likely to go, fuck this, I'll go somewhere else so I can earn money. You know, because if they're doing it for monetary reasons in the first place, then when the money stops flowing, they're going to stop putting their energy into that business, and they'll put it somewhere else to get the money. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about the money, and like I say, that has happened. We've seen that those channels go and disappear onto other platforms, the Bitcoin total platforms or whatever, and they've sort of gone from here, but we still keep going. We're still here.
Sorry, we digressed again.
Sorry, you actually in the chat. Sorry,
Yeah.
I've distracted you. Sorry, Cookie.
No, it's all right. Authentic human programming. Hello. I've been scrolling down looking for where you read out the quote from, so I could stick it up on the screen. But I haven't got there yet, I think.
Lawrence Pizza.
904
Oh,
it
cool.
was.
Louis R, hello. Alexa, is eugenics a good idea? Yeah, try asking it, see what it says. I'm still looking for that. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm still scrolling down. So that was where I put that link in. Right. Neo Dog, hello. Thanks for joining us in the chat, folks. Steve, hello, Steve. Check Steve's show from last Thursday. He brought up several points. I think it was 7 points, was it? About or questions to think about when we're talking about people working together or uniting together, or that expectation of forming groups, whether it is or is not beneficial to you, things like that. Definitely a good one to listen to. And a shout out as well to Lotsome Tapfro again. I think it was you that suggested the circle of zero, the circle of none. It's kind of a way of trying to express the idea that, you know, the group does not exist except for the individuals within it. Like, without all the individuals that make it up, the very concept of the group is just that. It's just a concept. No group exists without individuals making it up. And being able to, like we were talking about future and past and present, being able to live in both worlds at the same time, where you are your own individual, you are your own author, but that doesn't prevent you from working with other people, working in groups of others. So therefore you're living in both worlds at once, and you can get benefit out of both worlds at once. It's only when one starts to counteract the other or contradict the other that problems begin. Yeah, when one tries to become dominant over the other.
Well, it's interesting when you read those quotes from like J. Edgar Hoover and obviously Kennedy, and you look at the quotes going forward to what we've got now. Trump, you know, it's like how they've dumbed down. We had Bush as well, the Bushes, you know, Bush Junior. You know, and you think about the sort of types of minds that were, you know, there back then, and they were speaking out towards the end. You'd have to say, you know, it was at the end of his White House presidency that he said this, I think. And with Kennedy, it was different. It was in the mid of his second, or he's going to go for his second term, wasn't he?
Yeah.
When he said that. So he was still, if you like, you know, Edgar Hoover got out, you know, at the end. But it's like I say, they've dumbed it right down. Look what we've got now. Like I say, Trump, and it's just turned into, you know, ridiculous cartoon circus. God knows what you want to describe it as. You know, it's and in this country as well with Boris and this nonsense with Brexit and keeping everybody in a complete state of, you know, not knowing what's going on, you know, in general, you know.
Yeah.
We still don't know there's going to be an election.
Okay. I'm still scrolling through. Hugh McMahon, hello. He said more holes in a second-hand dartboard. I think you mean the 9/11 official story, yeah? Yeah, definitely. I said hello to you. I said hello to you. James Owen, hello. James knew it was Jakar, yeah. One of the characters from Babylon 5, somewhat unsung science fiction series that was loosely based on the Lord of the Rings, but it is quite an interesting series, and they bring up some interesting ideas through the series. And he was one of the main characters in it. Nick GB, hello. Anybody know how Jace from Raconteurs, he was having another op on his other leg? I'd no idea, mate. I haven't seen or heard anything of him, so I don't know. And Lowland Pete, hello. Hope you're all right, mate. Let the libtards call themselves and vegans. The militant vegan genocide. Do you think they'd go along with the cannibalism thing? Yeah. I don't know. We'll have to ask a vegan. Would you eat a cannibal burger? If it was saving the planet, if it was saving the Amazon. New being, hello. Thanks for joining in. And I think I'm waiting for the chat to suddenly jump like it often does. I must have missed that quote when I was scrolling, man, but thanks for reading it out. Thanks for saying it.
I'll make a mention of Windows in the World, the recent one, which goes out on Sunday, I think, yeah? It was particularly good this week. Yeah, particularly good.
I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet. It's something about catastrophes.
Hive mind. Yeah, programming.
Yeah.
He's got quite a few different articles that he brings in. Yeah. So,
Cool. I'll check that out, Gary. Cheers. Because I did see it pop up, but I haven't had a chance to.
and there was another thing. I can't remember if it was him or somebody else mentioned the thing about the Amazon. All they're saying. He mentioned that it was Leonardo DiCaprio who said that, the Amazons are the lungs of life, and posted a picture that's actually 20 years old. And then he's got tweets from other people posting pictures of the Amazon fires, which aren't even the Amazon, they're in a different country. And basically a lot of what they're saying about the Amazon fires is false anyway. Yeah, I think it was, actually no, it might have been Truth Stream Media, her video. Because she then went on to say about the Amazon fires, they're burning it down so they can grow more soy for animals. And, but anyway, a lot of the arguments they're using aren't true at all.
But that's sort of mostly true, or partly true. It is mainly that kind of industrial reason why they're cutting down large areas, and cutting it down, they then also burn what's left, so they're burning it. And a lot of it is because they're just clearing land for building, for industry and for people. So agriculture is part of that industrial growth that he's trying to bring in to boost his economy, maybe he's pursuing that kind of nationalistic expression, like a lot of them seem to be trying to follow at the moment. But it is a Hegelian process. The rise of the right is necessary so that the left can come in and form the tyranny by having somebody to fight against.
Absolutely right. Because, it doesn't occur to the average person, how can the United Nations, literally every country on earth, be screaming about climate change, and Brazil's just allowed to cut down the Amazon rainforest? Previous governments have chopped away at it, but it's a big scandal if a Brazilian government goes in and cuts just like 100 square miles. There used to be outrage over that. Now this guy's going and cutting it down and burning it, and the whole world ought to be on his back. But nobody's talking about sanctions or nobody's talking about that kind of.
Not sanctions yet, because I think, like I was talking about the other week, I think they're trying to use it as a foot in the door, so that they can not only send in NGOs again, a lot of whom had been pushed out by him and his new cabinet, but also so that possibly they can get military in there. Because remember I said, Macron was making a direct statement of let us help you, we'll send military troops over to help with dealing with the problem. In other words, let our military into your land so that we can start setting up.
I got a feeling it was the UN that told him to start fires, because they know that it'll bolster people like Extinction Rebellion.
Yeah,
And that's what I'm saying. The United Nations would tell Bolsonaro to do that, and then they'd walk around with their hands behind their back whistling while, you know, Extinction Rebellion starts screaming in the street. It's the worst, most blatant form of manipulation going.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
In a sort of connected way, the one other thing I wanted to mention was just to sort of put this out there. I do this kind of thing every so often. I just put ideas or questions out there just because I feel a need to. But the last week, I mean, we were talking about it the other week. There seemed to be a definite energetic change that happened last week. And over the week leading up to, you know, today's the 9th of the 9th, and then we got the 11th on Wednesday. It's this time period when that event took place. So a lot of people's minds are back on that information and those sort of subjects of discussion, etc. But there seemed to be this definite change in the energy, and the energy felt very well, to me, the way I experienced it is it felt very pressured, almost like there was an increase in the barometric pressure. I was getting that kind of sinus pressure, like I had a severe cold or something, which I didn't, but you know, I had that kind of effect. At the same time, we had Dorian building and then moving into the Bahamas and all that's been going on, and it's now moved up the coast of America and is now up by Canada. Made me curious whether it might eventually catch on the jet stream and go over to Greenland. Yeah, but I wanted to point out it's still another 2 weeks to the autumn equinox, which is on the 23rd. Another interesting connection, or could call it synchronistic. It's 23rd is a Monday. So on Moon Day, the 23rd, the 2 3s, the 3 2 reverse, the moon is a reflection. So you reflect, you reverse the 2 3, it becomes a 3 2. That's the equinox. Yeah. But to me, it felt very much like the weather was changed, as if we were already well into autumn. You can feel a little, you know, chill in the air, and it's got that sense of the autumn process going into winter. So it feels as if we're ahead of time. And I just wanted to sort of make a point of it. And so, you know, just think about it, be aware, you know, do you notice that it's chillier? Because I think we might end up with a much colder winter this winter, maybe. I know you said that they were talking about there being another heat wave or something.
Yeah, someone mentioned that today. I'm not sure if it's true, but I haven't looked into it. But yeah, apparently there's another hot spell coming. But yeah.
I wondered if the reason I had that kind of feeling as if it had gone chilly, as if it was getting colder, was maybe because as Dorian formed, it would have been pulling a lot of the air with it. A lot of that hot air from Africa, from the Sahara, that sometimes comes north to us, like the heat waves we've had this year, have been supposedly attributed to that movement of air northwards. So could it be that as Dorian went west, it drew a lot of that hot air away from Africa, which allowed colder air from the Arctic to come further down over us? So we had a little cold wave rather than a heat wave. We've had a cold wave for the last week.
Yeah, that's going. I mean, I had a bad head. I don't know if that's got anything to do with it. I had a horrible headache. But,
Did you make the rain?
I don't know. I had it for all day and most of the night. Right.
You can screen share on that copy, yeah?
Yeah, sorry. I could hear you got barking or something in the background.
Yeah, children giggling over the top of the bus engine.
Oh, right. Oh, those terrible children. We've got to do away with children. Ban children.
I'll be fine when the fucking eugenics starts in earnest. In the meantime, you know, I have to put up with fetus arms and legs. You can buy them frozen from the frozen food shop. Yeah? Crunchy limsies. Never mind. I'm thinking of Gollum, yeah? Crunchy birds.
Yeah. Is it crunchy? Is it tasty?
Anyway, yeah, I'm going to have to go to the actual page here. But you see, this is the magnetic index, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
The Earth has like a magnetic shield around it, like a big hairnet. magnetic thing. And sometimes it gets pushed in and it gets what? No, that's nobody in here. Sometimes it gets pushed in and it gets weakened, and when it does, cosmic rays come through and you get that red and yellow thing. Yeah, this is electromagnetic storm. Now, what was interesting about this is if I read across from the top, Dorian maximum sustained wind speeds, 70, 85, 110. The red is 150, the next one 180, 155, and then it goes down to 110.
Yeah.
So this was
And the timing of the week. Yeah.
so this was basically, as the cosmic rays came through, they speeded the hurricane up, which is what they've been saying for ages. Yeah, that it's the sun that drives the weather, and this is whether they steered it or not. I believe they probably did.
I think they amplified it and they caused it to stall over the Bahamas.
Yeah, I watched the Heart report, and it does seem that they don't generally push hurricanes. What they do is they kind of break away the back of them, so that they sort of fall back on themselves.
Yeah.
And change direction that way. Yeah, and he had some pretty good.
This time they were doing a kind of cat motion where they sort of did that to push it northwards.
Yeah, and like he showed lines going right through the clouds, you can see them, and then the clouds all move a bit, and then the line reforms in the same place. And then he goes and looks on the Google map, and right there is one of the big microwave domes. US Navy.
Yeah, a radar dome. Oh, it would certainly correlate very well. I think they've referred to it as an Earth spot rather than a sun spot. What you're looking at is kind of like a cross section of an Earth spot where the magnetosphere comes down or caves in slightly and the cosmic rays push in and it amplifies the storm, or it adds to the creation of a storm. But the general academic body, the perspective on this kind of stuff still they're still in denial of that, even though it is starting to creep in different ways. It's a slow process getting the changeover in the academic body. It's very slow to change. But this kind of stuff is now starting to register with mainstream science, and they're starting to be a bit more honest about it. Maybe they're just now starting to think that they can't deal with the sheer amount of evidence and argument that's coming out to back it up. So, more of that stuff, like the electric universe theory or theories, it's starting to become so apparent that they can't really deny it anymore. And the abundance of science to back it up is building and building and building, so that they can't, they have to change their textbooks and whatever. But hopefully we'll get there. I'll get back to my chat room. I was too busy looking for pictures on that. Thanks again to everyone in the chat. Beowulf, hello. Is that Beowulf or Beowulf? Are you a wolf? Just have a quick scroll up, see if there's anyone. I think I've mentioned or said hello to everyone. So I'm going to wind it up there, unless there's anything else you guys want to say. We'll be back on Wednesday on the Reality Chat channel.
Yeah, sorry, I'm still here. Yes, we'll be here again. We're not on your channel, Cookie, on the Reality Chat channel.
Yeah, on the 11th.
Yes, 9/11. Well, it's not 9/11 really. Not in this country. We don't say 9/11 here, do we?
No, it's 11/9.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's just, we'll I thought this when I was writing my notes up. I thought, should I say anything about the 9, the September 9? Sept is 7, but this is the 9th month. All that kind of stuff to do with the calendar. But then it just gets more confusing. Just makes it more confusing when you're trying to point at a reference that, according to that calendar, was on such and such a date. So I want to talk about the event, not the complexities of the calendrical system. But 11/9, not 9/11.
Yeah, so we'll get into that as well. So yeah, and all the bits that are floating around as well. Who knows what's going to happen between now and Wednesday?
Yeah. Well, they're having the vote tonight, so you never know.
Yeah.
We might hear that Boris is going to resign or something, along with his brother and Burkow and whoever else. Amber Rudd as well is gone, isn't she? So
Yeah.
Along with preparations for Catalan's National Day, which is September 11th. I thought that was a smart move by the guy that used to be president.
yeah.
Choosing 9/11 for your national holiday.
Jump on the bandwagon.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was great. That's kind
Right.
of that's the only way to put this sort of thing right, isn't it? Go and confront it face on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, guys,
That's
I've
why
got
I can still
to
keep
do
talking
one.
about it.
So, are you wrapping up, Cookie? I'm gonna.
Yes,
head off
I
in a
am.
sec.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us in the chat, folks. Thanks for giving us your attention for a couple of hours. We'll be back again soon. Take care and don't forget, keep thinking. Catch you
Cheers.
later. Good
Thank
night.
you.
All.
No.
Click the button.